Welcome to our podcast. This is Friends on Fire.
I'm Mike. I'm a lifelong devotee of financial independence. I even wrote a book about it.
And I'm Maggie, a newer convert, but just as passionate, especially on the intersection of minimalism and financial independence.
We're one and the same.
We are two like-minded friends who believe that talking about money with your friends and family opens the door to financial well-being.
The Friends on Fire podcast is about dispelling myths, building financial acumen, and sharing your financial independence journey with the people you care about.
This is Friends on Fire.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Maggie.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm exhausted. I literally just got off the treadmill, so I'm actually like physically exhausted. We're kind of squeezing this recording in, but I'm also kind of just like, I'm just really tired lately. Like there's just a lot going on.
Maggie, you've been really tired lately since the moment I met you.
I know. Just wait until May 7th, Mike. I'm going to be like a whole new woman. That's the day after I retire, by the way.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe. I think it's going to be a few weeks before you get to recover.
I think you're right. I think it's going to be more than a few weeks, just knowing myself. But I will say I'm really excited to talk about this topic.
Why is that?
Because we've been on, like we just finished this 5-part series. I actually, for once, feel like it was too much talking about me. And I want to just get back to some general finance topics that I hope will help people in their day-to-day lives.
Well, you might have felt uncomfortable about it, but we had a ton of new listeners. And so that series was pretty popular. That's
fair. That is our number one most popular episode, which usually is episodes from, the very, very beginning of time when we started this, hundreds of episodes ago. Our number one is the one where I announced that I'm quitting my job to early retire. So you're right. People seem very interested. And I've gotten tons of messages on social media and just people like really enjoying the story and following along with us. So.
But today we're going to get back to our roots and talk about something specific. And we've gotten some questions about this recently, haven't we?
Yeah, we get a good bit we've gotten questions probably consistently on this topic of just what to invest your 401k in, right? It's a common thing that almost everybody has some version of a 401k, a 403b, some sort of a retirement account. And usually, the average person, I would say, is a little bit unsure what all the options are, how to dig into it, and what actual investments should be in their 401k, right? We talk a lot about like how you should put a lot of money into your 401k and definitely take your company's match. Yeah. So we've done a bunch of episodes on how important it is to, of course, take the company match and max it out. Ideally, we did that in our episode about a very early episode about how 401ks should be your BFFF. BFFF? That was a lot of Fs. BFF, best friend forever. And now we're going to lean more into what you should actually do with the investments in your 401k. I think, Mike, you should give one of those fancy disclaimers first, though.
We want to be really clear about this episode and that we're going to be discussing investment options and how to go about picking the right ones. But we're not going to be making specific picks for you because, like everything in this show, we will explain how it works, but then you need to go do your own research. So please don't sue us.
Yeah, we're not professional accountants, financial planners, or attorneys. These are just our own personal thoughts and opinions. All your situations are different.
Okay, so let's start with a refresher about 401ks and 403bs. It's a retirement savings account that allows you to save money pre-tax, invest it, and then start withdrawing it penalty-free at age 59 and a half. And this is something that's established by the IRS, so US-based only. You pay taxes when you withdraw it, and in theory, you're paying it at a lower tax rate. This may or may not be true, depending on your individual situation. And if it's not true, a Roth 401k is going to work in the opposite way. And this is an option that is also becoming much more popular at companies where you pay taxes now and then not at the time of withdrawal.
Yeah, the idea is you're going to pay taxes on your money one time or another, right? You either take the hit now or you take it later. And yeah, it's a strategic decision on which one you think is right for you. So we're not really going to get into like what's better for you, a regular 401k or a Roth IRA. There's a ton of research out there. Maybe we'll do an episode on it in the future. This is more of like, once you have either a 401k, a Roth 401k, or a 403b, et cetera, like, what do you do with it?
The 401k itself has fees. So this is a product that is managed on behalf of your employer. You might work for a company. That company hires Fidelity to manage and administer the 401k, and you pay fees for that, and it comes out of your account. So if you were to look at your account history, you would see monthly or quarterly or annual fees.
And you don't get to choose that, right? So to your point, your company has a contract, and at times it changes. So like our company used to have a contract with Wells Fargo. That's who our 401k was with for years. Then they redid the deal for, whatever reason, just like people redo deals sometimes. Now we're with T. Rowe Price. So everything transferred over. You got to in some cases, reselect investments. So it's fairly common that during the course of your retirement account, your company may choose to change providers also, in which case they'll explain to you how that works.
That's right. And then the investments you choose also have fees. Now, these are going to be pretty small, but over time it gets expensive. And so if you have your savings in a 401k, the same 401k for 40 years, it might only be 1% a year or 2% a year, but over time, that's going to be a ton of money. So on a little side note, one piece of advice we can give you is to roll your 401k into a self-administered IRA with your brokerage firm to lower those fees.
But to be clear, you can only do that when you leave your company.
That's right.
Right. So while just so everyone gets how 401ks and again, 403bs, et cetera, work. So your point about fees, I think, is just worth clarifying to people, which is there are fees that company that manages your 401k charges when it's through an employer sponsored plan. And a lot of those fees go away or will lower when you go to a self-administered plan through a brokerage house, which is the point is more when you leave a company, be very thoughtful about how you transition your 401k because you could save some money on fees at that point.
And the second point on top of that is that you should be familiar with the fees you're paying. And you could find this very easily by looking at your account history. And we would encourage you to do it. It's kind of like reading the fine print on all your contracts. Something I love, Maggie.
Yeah, something I never do. I just send them over to you and ask,
That's right.
What should I know?
Okay, so 401ks almost always have very limited investment options. And this is by design. Companies want you to see it as a benefit and not be overwhelmed by it. And if you have 10,000 investment options, nobody's going to invest in anything and they're going to get worked up and they're going to contact HR. So if you log into your 401k plan, you're probably going to see 5, maybe 10 investment options. And they're all going to fall under the following categories. The first is going to be money market funds. And you can think of these as kind of a cash savings account. Super low risk, but also very, very low return. It's something that you just kind of like sit in for a time being when you are picking out your investments. But over the long term, it's not a useful investment tool.
It's basically like it is a mutual fund that invests in highly liquid, near-term type of investments.
You just read that online?
Yeah. You like that? Was that good? Was that right? Good?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically like cash.
Yeah. Like Google said.
Yeah. The other one is going to be target date funds. And when people come to us with questions, Maggie, this is, I think, always what they are in, just because it seems like a product that should work for people. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about target date funds.
Well, it's the easy path for people that don't know what to do. They come in and a lot of the online systems sort of push you towards a target date fund.
And the reason target date funds are popular, to your point, they are kind of pushed on you because it is positioned in a marketing sense as something where the money is managed to give you a certain return based on your retirement age, which sounds great. But what it is really doing is it is taking a mixture of high risk, medium risk, low risk, so stocks, bonds, and cash, and changing that mix over time so that you are more aggressive when you're young and less aggressive when you're old. And that's managed for you, and you just kind of invest in your retirement date and then let it ride for 40 years. That's the theory.
Yeah. And for people who are less familiar, and by the way, when I say stuff like that, I'm always talking to myself. Like I had this question, a few years ago when you're talking about, the mix of, high, medium, low risk items. The bonds and cash are the lower risk, but lower return items that are in that mix. And then the stocks and different types of stocks are in the, higher risk, but higher return. And again, there's a diversified mix of that adjusts as it's predicting you getting closer and closer to whatever you set as your target date of retirement. So a lot of people pick a target date that's when they're going to be around 60. So what do you think of target date funds, Mike?
I think they are fine. I have never invested in them. I have a much more aggressive appetite for investments than these funds do.
A lot of the target date funds also have a higher expense ratio on them.
Yeah, that's true because they need to be actively managed and changed over time.
And I would argue you're not always getting what you pay for in terms of, like, on a lot of funds, not just a target date fund, but there's a whole school of thought around index funds and the performance you get from those, and just something that generally tracks the performance of the stock market. And I would just argue you're not getting a lot for your money out of those target date funds.
The next category is going to be bonds, corporate bonds, or treasury bonds. And bonds are essentially just debt. Like, so you are buying someone's debt and they are going to pay you a very low interest rate over time. And so when we talk about low risk, this is going to be on the lower end risk, because in these funds it's going to be large corporations or government bonds. And so it's going to be very stable, but a low interest rate. Now, the last category is going to be equity funds, so stock funds. And these come in a bunch of different flavors. And so again, you're going to see this list and you should be able to find these keywords that I'm reading off to you in almost every single 401k investment option. So when it comes to equity funds, there's going to be, and I'm generalizing here because your plan could call these different things, but there's essentially small cap, large cap, international, high growth, and broad index. Now there could be some other ones in there, but these are the pretty common ones. Small cap means small capitalization, smaller companies. Large cap, larger capitalization, so very large companies. You have international, self-explanatory. High growth, which means that companies that tend to not pay a dividend, but their objective is to grow their stock price over time. And then broad index, which is going to be, Maggie, this is something you really like, the S&P 500 broad index fund.
Yeah.
So those are the types of funds that you're going to see in your 401k. All have value, all will grow over time, but it really comes down to how much risk you want to take on.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of risk, I'll just share my own personal preferences. And I say personal preferences, they've been heavily influenced by you in many ways, Mike, you and many others, but I like broad index funds, but I like them for my shorter term investments. On my 401k, which is long-term, I don't plan on, barring an emergency or something, I don't plan on touching my 401k for another 20 years. So on that one, I've gone really aggressive, similar to how you have. And I'm in almost 100%, actually, I believe 100% large cap funds. Mm-hmm. The same one. I mean, there's like one large cap fund to choose from. Like you said, there's always a limited set of funds that you can choose from in most of these setups that companies have. And so I am very aggressive in my 401k, and I'm less aggressive. Now, arguably the stock market and an index fund, many could argue, is aggressive compared to bonds anyways, but I'm less aggressive in some of the short-term money that I need.
Yeah, that's a great point. To continue on the topic of risk, think about money market funds like cash. Basically no risk, but very low return. Bonds are going to be one step up, lower risk, some risk, but pretty low returns. In between that and then your equities are going to be your target date funds, which are going to be a mix of all of these things which change over time. And then moving up the scale of risk, you get to your broad index funds. And then you have just your straight equity funds, which are going to be the historically most risky, but also historically higher returns. And that's why, Maggie, you and I invest very heavily in high growth funds in our retirement accounts, and they've done really well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, up until recently, but everything's not doing super well right now. So
that's true. So over the past 3 months, they've done quite poorly, much more poorly than like a bond fund, for instance. But if you look at it over time, you have done quite well, much greater than bonds.
And history would predict that they will also rebound quite well over time also. But over time, long term.
And just to be clear, going back to our disclaimer, we are not advising you to invest in large cap stock funds. That's what we do, and we've had some success with it, but market could completely collapse tomorrow. And so if you were to go and put all your money into a large cap fund in your 401k, you could lose 30% of it the following week. And so this is why you need to be very comfortable with the level of risk you are taking on. And if you are not comfortable losing 30% of your portfolio over the course of a couple of weeks, then you should mix in some lower risk investments.
And I think, what you just said, Mike, is an important point too, of whether you get your investing advice from a blog, a podcast like ours, a formal financial planner that you're paying for advice, no matter who gives you that advice and where you're kind of, picking up and gleaning different pieces of information, ultimately you need to decide what works for you. And you need to decide, what appetite for risk you have, like Mike was talking about, and what you can stomach and everything else, and learn enough about all of this stuff that you feel good making a, educated and informed decision, to the point where you're not going to get frustrated at someone else, right? Like when my, large cap growth 401k is down lately, I'm not like, dang it, Mike, why'd you say to do that? I wouldn't be as much down if I had, more bonds or treasury funds in my portfolio, right? Like I just say that as in like, I need to own that. I made that decision. I made an informed decision based on information that was available to me. And that's my decision. And I'm going to, deal with it. So I'm fine with it. I don't blame you at all for the performance of my 401k. Though I do give you credit
Thanks,
when it's
Maggie.
going great,
Yeah, that's right. All right. Maggie's Minute on the Mic. I got a question for you. You ready?
What? This is new.
Yeah, it's a surprise.
I feel like I've totally forgot that we used to do Mike's Minute on the Mic.
Yeah,
that
this
was
used
like
to be a thing, like 100
so
episodes
2020.
ago.
Yeah,
Yes.
long time ago.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Wait, hold on. Let me get my timer. I'm going to go easy on you since it's been a while. You don't get a timer.
Oh, good. So it might be minutes,
So,
Maggie's Minutes on the mic.
Right. Maggie's 15 minutes on the mic. All right. So you are going to be leaving work in just a matter of weeks, really.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do with your 401k? It's really a trick question. So let me give you the second question. What are you going to invest it in once these limited funds go away and you have to pick something new? I know.
Well, to be completely honest, it has been on my agenda and my to-do list to talk to you about what I'm supposed to do with my 401k when I roll it over. But I mean, I'm half joking. I was going to kind of continue with the same plan I'm on now. I was planning to do a little bit of research between now and then. I've got a couple months to work it out. And some of that research was going to include talking to you in more detail, Mike. But I was going to roll that puppy over and have a very similarly aggressive investment mix, which is heavy in the large cap.
Well, that sounds like a good plan.
Okay,
and you will be happy to know that fund is also available for purchase anywhere else. So
I knew
it's
that.
not,
I did
it's
know
not
that for what it's worth.
Exclusive to our work account.
I did know that. And yes, I was planning on doing something similar. I did want to think a little bit more through like what the actual performance is at the time that I am rolling it over. And like, is there any, if this is a dumb question, don't include it, but I don't know how different taxes and fees work when I actually do the rollover. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think it's a dumb question, but I actually don't understand the question.
It's just a straight rollover. Like, for example, if it was something else and I was selling investments, I had to like liquidate something and then buy new, I would have to pay short or long-term capital gains on it.
Yeah.
In this case, it's a true rollover, which is an exception with the IRS. I don't have to pay anything, but does it matter what I roll it into? I can roll it into anything?
As long as you roll it into a qualified account, then
an IRA account.
There's no penalty or fee. And so I think you can initiate a rollover either by the sending account or the receiving account. But this all happens on the back end for you. It can be done automatically, which is to prevent people from getting it cashed out and then some time passes and then you like miss the window to actually do the quote unquote rollover and then you pay taxes on all of it as income. Yeah. And so they make this very easy for you. You will have no problem with this. There will be no cost implications.
Yeah, perhaps we'll do an episode on rollovers once I figure out how to actually do my rollover.
We can do it in real time as we go through the steps online.
That might make people lose all their faith in us and the advice we share. Or I say us, me. I do know my husband has successfully rolled it over. Like his company changed. I don't know. They're always like changing names. And at some point there was something where like he was able to roll over a big chunk of his 401k. Into an IRA. I think when he switched kind of within the parent company, it doesn't matter. Anyways, he's done it.
A lot of context.
He's done it successfully. And so he's probably going to be in my various people I consult with on what to do, including Google, who is usually the first person I consult with on everything.
That's right.
Google, Mike, and Greg.
So along those same lines, Maggie, if your company were to kind of change providers or technically change companies, or you were to leave your company and go somewhere else, you can roll this into your new employer's account. You don't have to roll it into a self-managed account. Like if that seems super overwhelming to you, then you don't need to do it. You're just going to pay a slightly higher fee. You can and you should consolidate all your accounts over time, even if that means consolidating them with your current employer's 401k.
Well, let me ask you a question, Mike. If you were leaving your company right now to go to another company, or when you left, AT&T to come to our company, did you roll it into our 401k or did you keep it as a separate individually managed IRA? Because I can almost answer that question for you, even though I just asked you the question.
All right. Well, then why don't you
kept it on your own. You didn't roll it into a new 401k.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Because it's lower fees.
That's right. And I like the options and the flexibility of being able to actively trade within them. So I always self-manage. So
the reason I was clarifying that is because I feel like at some point it sounded like you were saying that you should try to have it all in one account. But it's not a big deal if you have left some companies and you have every time, let's say you job hop a lot, which some people do, right? If you've left a company every 2 years, you've left with some 401k money. And every time you should roll that over into your individual IRA account, your personal IRA account, your retirement account. And then every time you start a new company, you have to use your company's 401k provider. That's just how it works. So you can, the best you're going to do often is have two different accounts, right? So every time you leave another company, roll it back into that main account that you're keeping.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you for the clarification. What I don't recommend is having 10 different company-sponsored 401ks at every previous employer you had. Over time, you should consolidate them. I personally consolidate them into self-managed accounts, but if that's too much work for you or too overwhelming for you, consolidating them into your current employer at least allows you quick access and visibility into it, and it's going to help you manage it better over time.
Yep. I forget about that sometimes because I've been at the same company for so long. And so I've not had to manage, a lot of these rollover situations. It's been 15 years since I've done a 401k rollover.
Yep. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Perhaps my last and final 401k rollover coming soon.
All right, Maggie, top 3 takeaways.
Okay. Number 1, 401ks are an amazing tool, your BFF, like we said, that allow you to invest savings pre-tax and then let it grow. It's important to understand that and leverage a 401k or 403b.
Number 2, investments are usually limited and you can see what the fund options actually invest in as far as stocks, bonds, and cash. So look at the details.
Spend some time browsing in the website. If it's T. Rowe Price, Wells Fargo, Fidelity, whatever company it is, look around and see what those funds are, check the fees. On that note, number 3, picking the right investments, as we discussed, depends on your appetite for risk. So do some research, look at what all of the different fund options are, think about the different categories that Mike talked through earlier, from money market funds all the way to, large cap growth funds, and pick the things that you are most comfortable with. And also make sure that you understand the fees associated and the overall risk associated.
All right, Maggie, I look forward to doing this rollover with you as soon as you stop working. It's exciting. All right, so thanks everybody for listening. If you've been challenged or inspired by what you've heard, please rate and review the show. You can also subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode.
Yep. And if you have any thoughts or questions, we always love to hear from you. You can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370, or you can hit us up on Instagram. And we've been getting a lot of voicemails and texts lately, and we love hearing from all of you, and we try to reply to all of them. So please reach out.
All right.
Thanks everyone.
Maggie.
Bye, Mike.
Bye.